It's time for Declare Your Independence with Ernest Hancock.
Welcome back to Declare Your Independence with me, Ernest Hancock, each and every day here on the LRN.FM network here in Phoenix, Arizona. And it's talk show host privilege. I get to talk to whoever I want to, and who I want to talk to today is L. Neil Smith. We check in on a regular basis. You know, a year or two goes by, it's time to get my dose of L. Neil. Because I tell you, we were enormously inspired in our early formative days as libertarians in the early 90s. And if it wasn't for L. Neil, we may have gone down the dark side. And he made sure he defined, you know what? Let me tell you what dark side is. You see this right here is dark side. We'll talk about that, but mine. From L. Neil's example, his writings and getting to know him personally, and his hardcore, no compromise philosophical bent. It came down. That's where the phrase came from me. It's like there are those that just want to be left alone. There are those that just won't leave them alone, and it doesn't get more complicated than that. And that's exactly how L. Neil, that seed, that splinter in my mind, was planted by probably genetics, but it was certainly fostered, and encouraged and nurtured by L. Neil Smith. Now, L. Neil, we're back in the 60s. You're a young man, a teenager. You're exposed to the people are telling you, they're going, look, yeah, you're a libertarian, man. You go, what are you calling me? So you got to go find out what that means. And I'm wondering, this is a question that is asked a lot. For our audience, I want to ask you this question: are libertarians born or made?
Oh my, that's a very, very good question. I think some of both. I believe that there are three basic inputs to human behavior. One of them is genetics. One of them is experience or upbringing or nurture or whatever you want to call it. And Ayn Rand taught me that the third input is the lifelong pattern of free will decisions that you make. It took a long time to understand her theory of free will, and I'm not going to try to explain it here, but it's quite real, and those three things working together produce numberless permutations and combinations, which is one reason why, as the Austrian economists tell you, you cannot quantify human behavior. And one of the reasons is there's just too many variables. You have these three sources. I mean, just think about the variables that come from genetics alone, and then add all your various experiences in life, and then add all the decisions that you've made. There's no way of predicting. So I'd say that probably it varies with the individual.
Well, what's a
my
fertile...
mother?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, my mother told me the first word I ever spoke was no. And I it's probably the case. But there are also people I have known in my life who have learned to be free. So probably some of both. Three things.
Well, what is the most fertile environment? You have a daughter. She's grown now. I've had 4 children, and if I were to create a freedom-loving, oriented society, the first thing you do is do away with government education. But what other than that, what is the most fertile ground, the philosophy by which you want to instill on the next generation? And I bring that up because what's going on in the Middle East. Here we have, they've been ruled by Pharaoh de jure since forever. And now they have an opportunity to finally pick, you know what, how about this self-ownership thing? I choose not to be ruled by anybody. So we can kind of, give the internet, credit and them being able to communicate with each other. But is there something else that was happening? I mean, is it give everybody a satellite television, or is it leave everybody alone, or give them a book, or let them have electricity so they can read it? And I mean, what is it? What would you think is an environment that would foster more freedom-oriented thinking that can't be overcome by government education or something?
Well, my daughter never set foot in a public school, ever. And in fact, now that the statute of limitations is up, I can say we never told anybody either. I mean, technically you're supposed to register your child and say they're being homeschooled and all that stuff. And we never bothered to do that either. I mean, it was none of anybody's business. Within the home, we did something that is fairly rare, I gather. I never, and my wife, Kathy, never told our daughter what she could read, what she could see, what she could hear. She lived a completely uncensored life as far as her inputs are concerned. And between not being contaminated by public schools and having all the input that she wanted, she's now going to a community college and pulling a 4-point. In fact, she just reported to me by text that she'd gotten an A++ on the most recent test she took. So it works, in terms of developing the mind. I think that what the only thing that we can ethically do about the Middle East, I mean, it's not our place to apologize or make up for the idiotic, cruel, terrible, stupid, evil things that previous American governments have done in the Middle East for the last at least 100 years. But we can try to reach out to, as individuals, we can try to reach out to whatever secular society exists in any given country or any given culture there, and communicate with them. I mean, there is a secular life. I know there's a secular life in Iran, for example. People look at things scientifically and logically, and they want to know more about science, and they generally favor the Western intellectual view of things. And what we have to do is reach out to those people and communicate with them and encourage that sector of their civilization to flourish. I mean, right now, their country, most Americans only think of the Middle East in terms of their equivalent of the Jerry Falwells or the Donald Wildmans or, that sort of thing. And if we were to be judged by people like that, it would make us, very mad. If the only picture that anybody else in the world had of us was of the, televangelists or the dog whistles, it would annoy us. And I grew up people from the Middle East in the sense that my first friends at college, when I came to college here when I was 17, for some reason, I don't even know why it happened, I got adopted by a whole lot of Arabic-speaking people. They liked me, and I liked them, and they were a mixture of both Christian and Muslim Arabs, and they threw nice parties, and they liked to listen to me play the guitar and that sort of thing. So I learned, I mean, at one point, one of them just took me aside and said, look, the only thing you know about the Middle East is the movie...
Lawrence of Arabia.
No, the other one about the establishment of Israel.
10 Commandments? Exodus?
No, I'll get it later.
Exodus. There's a bunch of them. I remember it was Steve McQueen, I think, in Exodus. That might have been the one. There's a lot more to talk about. It's important to get this foundation of a young libertarian back in the day so that we understand where we are and where we're going. We'll be right back on Declare Your Independence.